to see you. Very Smith report.
All right, thank you, Brian. This will, let me start with, we don't have any, do we have a, Melody, do we have any resolutions or anything? Announcements tonight? I see something on your desk. I forgot to ask you about it.
No, sir, this was one that JJ did. They did at the Homewood
Perfect.
Stadium. It was just a gift to them.
Great,
Everybody's
fantastic.
coming tonight. Proclamation. That's it.
See, I'm already slowing us down. I'm sorry.
Come on. Where's the preacher at?
All right.
Walter's not here.
We'll do that.
Right, there he is.
Okay, so let me call this meeting, the January 11, 2021 meeting to order. And we will start with an invocation, followed by the pledge from Pastor Todd Harrington.
And see, I promised him he could get out and see the game. See? Thank you, sir, for coming tonight.
So I'm just doing the prayer and someone else is doing the pledge? All right. Okay, good. Let's pray together. Oh God, you are good and very generous to us with your grace and patience, and we're thankful. Thankful for the fact that you can bring beauty out of ugliness, and this week's been very ugly and divided, and we pray that you will bring hope and healing, and pray that you'll use a small city like ours with the leadership as examples of those who can work together, disagree, but respect and honor one another. And so may we be a light here, and so of hope and healing. Thank you for this council and their commitment and their gifts and their time to serve all of us here at the city. And we're grateful for this city and the place that we live, thankful for the schools and the parks and our neighborhoods. And so out of thanksgiving and out of grateful hearts, we lift up this prayer in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Face the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. All right, Ms. Salter, if you will call roll, please.
Yes, sir. Councilor Gwaltney?
Here.
Councilor Geer? Here. Councilor Alamon?
Here.
Councilor Wolverton?
Here.
Councilor Sims?
Here.
Councilor Jones? Councilor Smith? Here. Councilor Nelms? Here. Councilor Andrus? Here. Councilor Harden?
Here.
And President Wyatt.
Here. All right.
Got one absent, but second one, we won't say where he is. Well, I ain't got it.
All right. Next is the reading of the minutes for December 21, 2020. I'd entertain a motion to dispense with the reading of those minutes that were distributed by Ms. Salter previous this week.
I would make that motion.
Motion by Ms. Smith.
Second.
Second by Ms. Andrus. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's 10 to 0. All right, next is board vacancies and appointments. First, we have the AGC at-large position that closed today. We have 2 applicants for that position, so I guess we will need to schedule interviews. Ms. Salter, can you work on that?
Yes, sir. Do you have a preference, Mr. Wolverton?
I was going to actually clarify. Were there 2 or 3? I thought there were already 2 previous and another one came in today. Is it?
Well, okay. Who do you? I had Rezick and Booth. Who else did you think it was? I need to look. There's one you have to find.
The current?
Okay, I'll have to look and see. Maybe 3 now.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make myself a note and look. But do you have a time when you? We're actually scheduling interviews already for something on Wednesday, the 20th. That we may announce later, but for a bid. But you know what date you want to try for?
I do not offhand. Just trying to look at the calendar here.
My apologies. We have had some sort of sound issue, and I have lost all sound from up front. It's going to recording and everything. I am troubleshooting it right now.
Okay.
But if you guys could just pause for just a couple of minutes.
Give us a second.
I'll let you know where we are.
He's very tough about it. We're going to find it out.
Okay, so a couple of quick announcements. We're having some technical difficulties here with sound. And that will affect a couple of things, not in this room really, but otherwise. We can't get the sound out to Zoom, so there is not going to be a Zoom broadcast tonight. And while this meeting will still be recorded, The recording, Brian will still be able to show stuff on the screen. That stuff will not pop up on the recording, but there will be a recording of the meeting with showing us and showing the sound, just sort of like we used to do in the old days. The old days being, you know, a year or so ago. But at any rate, so that's where we are. But otherwise, we're going to proceed and see if we can get through the rest of this. So where we left off, I believe, was on board vacancies and appointments, the HEC at large position. Those interviews are going to take place on
We'll try for that.
for January. We're going to try for January 21st to set those up, and Ms. Salter and Mr. Walton will do that. All right, the next vacancy, Arts Advisory Council Ward 1, which also closed today. I believe we have one applicant. Is that correct?
We do, and if we can, I'd like to get with the head of that group, Hannah Johnson, and let's confer about that and how to proceed. That's okay, but yes, it closed, and...
Then you'll come back to us next
Yes,
meeting about it?
yes.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ms. Kier. All right, last is BZA Ward 4, which closes in 2 weeks. We've got one applicant so far, but that will close on the 25th. We'll see if we get any additional applicants. All right, any other board vacancy or appointments that I don't have? Anyone else needs to discuss? Okay. All right, there are no additions to the agenda tonight, so I would just entertain a motion to approve the agenda as written. So moved. Motion by Mr. Gwaltney, second by Mr. Harden. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it's 10-0. All right. I don't know if that's me. All right. So that brings us to the consent agenda. I would entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Nelms.
Second.
Second by Mr. Wolverton. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's also 10-0. All right, which brings us to the old business agenda, and we're going to take 2 items out of order here. The first being 14-11-20, public hearing set for tonight for consideration to rezone property at 75 Bagby Drive from C1 Office Business District to MXD Mixed Use District, brought to us by Melinda Sellers of Burke Foreman for the owner Addison Investment LLC. We received word from Ms. Sellers earlier today that they wish to continue this item to the 25th as there's some additional information coming up. But we'll go ahead and start with a report from P&D.
14-11-20.
Yes.
Committee met and voted on December 7th, 5-0, to refer this item back to the full council without recommendation pending the public hearing. The motion was made by Councilor Gwaltney and seconded by Councilor Sims.
Thank you very much. All right, so with that, because the public hearing is set tonight, we will go ahead and open the public hearing. And anyone that wants to speak to it tonight is certainly welcome to come up and speak to it. Otherwise, we will just leave the public hearing open until the 25th so that the applicant can get that additional information to everybody and just leave it open. Is there anyone that wants to speak to it tonight? Okay. Then with that, without objection, we will carry that over and leave the public hearing open until the 25th. All right, next one we're also going to take out of order, 15-11-20, public hearing set for tonight for consideration to rezone property at 55 and 65 Bagby Drive from C5 to MXD. They're same thing with this one. We'll go ahead and get a report from Planning and Development.
Okay, the committee met December 7th and voted 5-0 to refer this item back to the full council without recommendation pending the public hearing. The motion was made by Councilor Gwaltney and seconded by Councilor Nelms.
Thank you very much. And with that, we will open this public hearing. Same deal. If there's anyone that wants to speak to it tonight, please feel free to come up and speak to it. Otherwise, we will wait until the 25th. We'll leave the public hearing open and allow anyone to come speak at on the 25th. All right, seeing that there's no one, we will, and without objection, I will carry this item open, also leaving the public hearing open until the 25th. All right, so with that, we'll go back to the beginning of the old business agenda to 08-11-20. Public hearing set for tonight for consideration of changing to the zoning ordinance, brought to us by Mr. Kendrick, myself, and Councilor Andrus. And we will start, Ms. Andrus, with a report from P&D.
The committee met and voted 5-0 December 7th to refer this item back to full council without recommendation pending the public hearing. The motion was made by Councilor Nellums and seconded by Councilor Sims.
All right, thank you very much. And with that, we will open this public hearing and take any comments from the public for or against. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Mr. Kendrick, will you give us a first reading first?
Yes, there is an ordinance to amend Section B entitled Zoning Amendments of Article 9 entitled Administration, Review, and Review Procedures to amend property lines as defined in Article 2 entitled Definitions, and to amend Subsection 4 of Section D entitled Accessory Structures for Article 5 entitled District Development Criteria, all of the zoning ordinance of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Homewood. Be ordained by the city as follows. Article 9 entitled Administration Review Procedures is amended. The only section amended under the current section is that the notice addressed to owners of property as required by paragraph 1 above shall be deemed given when deposited in U.S. mail, first class, posted, prepaid. Otherwise, the section is not amended in any other form. Section 2, property lines as defined in Article 2 entitled Definitions of Appendix A is defined as follows. Property lines: front property line is not changed, side property line is not changed, rear property line is not changed. Corner lots is changed to the following definition. Corner lots fronting 2 streets shall use the frontage with the least dimension as the front property line. The secondary front shall be used of applicable side building setback, but not less than 9 feet. Section 3, subsection 4 of Section D entitled Accessory Structures of Article 5 is amended to read as follows. Accessory structures. Accessory structures shall not occupy more than 30% of the rear and yard space, with an additional 5% allowed if permeable surfaces are used for appropriate structures, always subject to the 50% maximum lot coverage limitation in Article 4, Section 8.3. Section 4, that all of the provisions of the zoning ordinance to remain in full force and effect. Section 5, January 11th, 2020 at 6 p.m. is a time and place for the public hearing, which time and place all persons who have an interest in the ordinance shall be heard. Section 6, if any part of provision of the ordinance declared to be unconstitutional or invalid by a court of competent jurisdiction, all of the parts of the ordinance remain in full force and effect. Section 7, the ordinance become effective immediately upon its adoption by the city council, approval by the mayors, or otherwise becoming law.
Thank you, Mr. Kendrick. All right, so the public hearing already opened. Anyone from the public who wishes to speak for or against this matter? Seeing that we don't have anybody, we'll close the public hearing and take comments from the council. Anybody got any questions?
I don't have any comments, but I would move for unanimous consent.
All right, we have a motion for unanimous consent. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion from Ms. Smith, second from Ms. Andrus. Ms. Salter, roll call vote, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Gwaltney? Mr. Gear? Ms.
Yes.
Gear? Counselor Allamon?
Yes.
Counselor Wolverton?
Yes.
Counselor Sims?
Yes, this is just to be able to,
Just unanimous consent.
yeah, just unanimous consent. Okay.
Counselor Smith?
Yes.
Counselor Nelms?
Yes.
Counselor Andrus?
Yes.
Counselor Harden?
Yes.
And President Wyatt.
Yes. All right, so that unanimous consent passes 10-0. Any questions or comments about the substantive issues? Mr. Sims.
Thank you. I do have one question, and this goes back to some of the changes in the ordinance, and I was trying to do a comparison, and what you read, Mr. Kendrick, I was trying to compare that to what came out via email to the current zoning ordinance. And what came out via email, there was a section, Section B, where it references the zoning administrator responsible for posting on the property with signs and 15 days' notice. And then there was a second part of that, the however, that says the posting requirements set out in this section are not required for any city-initiated requests. And
That's what was amended a year and a half ago.
so you're saying that's already been amended and part of this order? Okay. Okay, so that, comparing it to what's, I guess, the copy I had online or that was provided by staff, that's why I thought that was a change as well. Okay.
That was specifically amended before, I want to say, the summer of last year.
Okay, because that's why I was wanting to confirm that, because I didn't see it in the, today's changes, but I did see that difference. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right.
Move to approve.
We have a motion by Ms. Smith. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Andrus. Another roll call vote, please, Ms. Salter.
Counselor Gwaltney? Yes. Counselor Gear?
Yes.
Counselor Allamon? Yes. Counselor Wolverton?
Yes.
Counselor Sims?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Yes.
Counselor Nelms?
Yes.
Counselor Andrus?
Yes.
Counselor Harden?
Yes.
And President Wyatt.
Yes. So that is 10-0, and that will be ordinance 2790. All right, next item is 131120, public hearing set for tonight for consideration to rezone property at 2510 18th Street South from C2 Neighborhood Shopping District to R7 Attached Dwelling Unit District, brought to us by Gold Nugget LLC, to permit the construction of an 8-unit townhouse development. The Planning Commission has already heard this and voted 8-0 favorable recommendation in favor of the rezone. And we will start with a report from P&D.
The committee met December 7th and voted 5-0 to refer this item back to the full council without recommendation pending the public hearing. The motion was made by Counselor Sims and seconded by Counselor Gwaltney.
Thank you. Mr. Kendrick, will you give us a first reading?
Yes, sir. This is an ordinance to further amend ordinance 1602 of the City of Homewood entitled zoning ordinance and the zoning map. Whereas the Planning Commission of the city has approved, recommended to the City Council that ordinance 1602 be amended by taking the property described herein from its current zoning classification C2 Neighborhood Shopping District and rezoning the property to the City of Homewood R7 Attached Dwelling Unit Zoning District. Whereas the City Council has found it necessary to set a public hearing as set January 11, 2021 as the time and place of the public hearing. Now therefore be ordained by the City Council as follows. That the following described parcel of property is described in Exhibit A with street address 2510 18th Street South, being the same as hereby is taken from its current zoning C2 Neighborhood Shopping District and rezoned to the R7 Attached Dwelling Unit District to permit the construction of 8-unit townhouse development. That from and after the enactment of this ordinance, the uses and restrictions applicable to R7 Attached Dwelling Unit as set out in ordinance 1602 previously adopted heretofore and is further restricted by the provisions of paragraph 1 above shall govern and control the uses made of and permitted of the property described in section 1. Section 3, that the time and place of the public hearing has been set at 6 o'clock p.m. on January 11th. The city clerk has given notice of the same as required by law. Section 5, that any part of provision or is declared to be unconstitutional or invalid by a court of common jurisdiction, all of the parts and provisions of the ordinance, if not thereby affected, shall remain in full force and effect. Section 6, that the ordinance shall become effective immediately upon passage by the city council and approved by the mayor, or as otherwise becoming law.
Thank you, Mr. Kendrick. All right, and we will go ahead and open the public hearing. And if there's anyone that wants to speak for or against this item, please come forward. And there's probably a sign-in sheet up there.
Drop on that? Okay, just be easier. My name is Doug Clapp, and as I'm putting on the sign-in sheet, I live in Rosedale at 1910 26th Avenue South, and I'm not going to write the item number.
Okay, could you say your name again?
Doug Clapp.
Okay, thank you.
Doug Clapp, 1910 26th Avenue South. I have lived in Rosedale since 2006. Today is Monday, so yesterday the Rosedale Community Development Corporation had its monthly meeting, and that's an all-volunteer nonprofit that works to maintain and strengthen the historic residential character of Rosedale. And the sentiment of, I am not born and bred Rosedale, but a lot of my colleagues on that are, and their sentiment was that they didn't feel like this proposal considered well a lot of the work that Homewood has done on planning for Rosedale's revitalization. And that in particular is a document from May 2006 produced in these places by a Homewood Special Committee for the goals for the revitalization and redevelopment of Rosedale. And one particular part of that that I'm interested in seeing take place could be impacted by this development, which is Griffin Brook running down there. And in the 2004 to 2010 time, there was a lot of talk about a linear park running from Vulcan down all the way to Central Park. And in fact, in 2008, Gold Nugget sold part of that Griffin Brook land above, they call it the quarry land, to the city of Homewood. And so, yeah, my hope is that whatever development decisions are made about that stretch of property, that it would support the neighborhood, and in particular support the idea of having green space and park for the neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Clapp. Appreciate it. Anyone else?
You want us to present?
Yeah, I was trying to say, if you wouldn't mind coming up and going ahead and presenting. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
John Abernathy, 303 Ascot Road. Tonight I'm here on behalf of Gold Nugget LLC and Blackwater Real Estate. And I am going to present, and my understanding is they cannot hear me, so I have to raise my hand every time I want to move the slide. So forgive me. And then also apologize, I know through the BZA, through the Planning Commission, through the Review Committee, many of you have seen this before. I will attempt to move through it thoroughly but briefly because it could be repeated for some of you. This is, the only thing different here, and I'll show it later, is we did split the buildings at the request of the fire marshal. We had 8 together, and this elevation shows where we split the buildings into 4 and 4. And that was for, if I remember correctly, just for being able to walk between, bring hoses and other things. We're going to try it out. There we go. So we're, Gold Nugget LLC is requesting the property be rezoned from its current C2 district to R7. Again, we were approved for the BZA for a 1-foot setback from, forgive me, I think it was 24 feet. The property, again, is currently zoned C2. It has a 0-foot front setback under the C2 zoning today. And then we were approved by the Planning Commission as noted before. So Gold Nugget LLC is the owner. Dan Lovell, Mike Graham, Steve Graham, Dan Lovell is here in the crowd representing Gold Nugget. And then the other second half of this joint venture development group is Blackwater Real Estate. And I lost my director of planning to the Alabama game during the intermission. So hopefully I can answer any questions. This is a survey. Again, I think you've seen it before, but this is existing site. And the grade, you can't see it well, but I know there was a mention just there of Griffin Brook. I believe it runs primarily through the easement, the Birmingham Waterworks Board easement. So it is, development of that brook is going to be extremely difficult given they don't allow you in that easement. But I know it does meander through there, but just noting that. As noted, the applicant gave in 2008 a large portion of the land back to the city of Homewood, the hillside there, creating a buffer between this property and residential behind. And in that agreement agreed to do new sidewalks along 18th as well. So these are the easements. The red is, I believe the red's the storm, and the green is the sanitary, and the blue is the Birmingham Waterworks Board easements, and the blue is what we cannot touch and what we cannot cross or work in or improve in any way. So several pictures, I know you all are familiar, but just for what you see, as I used to go back and forth to the middle school, what you see going back and forth as you go up and down 18th, that's been sitting there for a long time. It's impervious, broken up asphalt with a kudzu, and that's what's been sitting there for a very long time. So there's the C2 zoning. It's the last zoning going north under the commercial zoning. These are the uses that are permitted in there. Again, some less than desirable, in our opinion, uses with the car wash and the drugstore and other things that are allowed under the C2. As we, again, looked at this, when we first started, I'm just showing you some of the things we were trying to figure out what we were going to do. We laid out a few site plans, and I think for, again, to convince you that we think R7 is the better zoning. Here's some of the zoning, site plans we came up with. That was an office retail zone site plan. This was a car wash site plan that we came up with. We had a gas station site plan, again, as we were thinking through. We even thought through how the truck's going to get in and how they're going to get out and how they're going to service fuel. And believe it or not, it all worked, albeit tight. And there's, again, a service station elevation that you would see coming down the hill. So we convinced, we became convinced it was a better zoning as a residential, and as we started working through what could be available, we tried many different things, and really the parking requirement here and the limited ability we had on depth made us go to a unit that you could park underneath. And so that's why we came up with the townhome units with one parking underneath, one space underneath, except for one had two. But doing it this way allowed you to get half the parking spaces under the building, half outside. We've done some preliminary work, and I think the main thing to see here is the grading. You can see on the far left, on the high side, there's a little bit of grading, but otherwise, we generally follow the slope as it sits there today, and I think it goes from close to 84 to, on the low side, I believe around 76. So there's about 8 feet from one end to the other. We generally just follow the existing grades you see out there. And this is a utility plan. Again, servicing the units from the rear. There's some existing power lines there that you see from some of the overhead power. These are a preliminary sketch, and we came up with these elevations. Again, I think I mentioned this in our review committee. We're not 100% happy with this. I think it came from a more modern look to this, and we had some discussions. We're not sure exactly where we're going to go. We may put a slope roof on it. We may change some materials. We're looking at putting a balcony in the back. We talked about whether a balcony on the front was appropriate, and currently we're not doing that. So this is a work in progress, but this is just an example of scale about what the townhome units could look like. There were some questions about, and I don't remember if it was BZA or Planning Commission, but there were some questions about the distance from 18th. So this shows you the curb and gutter, the sidewalk, and then there's basically the units are turned to an angle. There's basically 10 feet if you come directly out of the door, angled to the sidewalk. And then that's when we came in with a screen wall, which I'll show in the next plan, where we came up with a short, maybe knee wall, a little bit higher screen wall. And then there was some question about one of the hearings about should we put a gate. So we went ahead and included that, a small gate there as a protection for a unit owner that might have a door on that first floor to walk out. They're protected from the sidewalk and then 18th. So from traffic standpoint, we've spoken with Greg, and he did not tell us anything that he saw as far as traffic that would be of a concern. There's adequate sight lines in both directions of travel. We talked with ALDOT just to verify they had no jurisdiction, which they said they do not. We looked at the trip generation manual for this project. So you see the AM peak hour has 4 trips, the PM 6 trips, which would generally average out to about 30 cars a day in and out for this development. And then by example, commercial use, specifically a gas station, which would be one of the most intense that you would have in a commercial zoning, it would have 822 cars back and forth. So significantly less traffic associated with this type of development than really any commercial development we could come up with. On the development, we see a lot of benefits of this versus commercial, and just versus sitting in its current condition, which it has been. One, it's very blighted. It just does not in any way have an attractive look going in and out of Homewood, and that would be different for a finished site. It is not in a very safe condition if you've been out there. There's some steep slopes going into BWWV's easement in this Griffin Brook. This would put it in a much more safe condition. This is, again, a primary corridor. Does not make you feel very vibrant or appealing as you go up and down and see that. And again, I think the development here would only, encourage other people to develop along the way as well in that area. So again, there were some questions about the target market. This is a brand new development. 8 units is very limited in how many we have, and we think it'll be 2,500 to 3,000 be the unit. And so those are the probably the likely target markets versus families. I know there was some discussion about would there be any school children in this. Again, it's only 8 units, but we don't even believe that will be a target market for these units just due to the price and the size. I think this is a very desirable use compared to what you could see there, and whether that would be our partnership or Gold Nugget, or whether it was sold one day, if it's not rezoned and it stays commercial, it could certainly be developed as commercial or sold for commercial, and anything that goes in there we think would not be near the desirable use as if we were able to do something like this, creating a streetscape. It's much less intense traffic, as I spoke, and then just personally, I think Homewood's done a lot along 18th for walkability and look, and I think this just adds to that. So I'm available for any questions.
In your planning for this, have you engaged with the Rosedale residents?
No, we have not had any meetings with the Rosedale community.
Is that something y'all plan to do to see how this impacts them?
We would be open to doing that. Candidly, this was, again, there's a big buffer between us and the Rosedale community, and this is right up on 18th, and just candidly thought it was very separated from the Rosedale community. And certainly we'd be open if they had design ideas maybe for what we're doing. I think a commercial use obviously would be a much more negative use in our opinion.
Right. Okay.
Before we get to any more council questions, let me just make sure. Is there anyone else here to speak for or against this item? Let me let them come up before we do anything further.
Good evening. My name is Pastor Byron White. I stay at 1822 26th Avenue South. I am part of the Rosedale Community Board that Mr. Doug Claps was speaking of. I am one that I didn't grow up in Homewood, but that whole strip right there on 1822 26th Avenue South, I was pretty much somewhat raised there. That was my grandparents' residence. 4 of my dad's brothers owned houses there, still own 3 plus the one that I am, and is originally the grandparents' house. I am one that is totally against the new development, the Gold Nugget development. 1, because of the traffic. 2, as being a part of the Rosedale neighborhood, as the councilman asked the question, did anyone come over to ask or to get the Rosedale community opinion or idea or what they thought, as if they were just pushing Rosedale out? I feel that, matter of fact, I know for a fact that Rosedale is a vital part of Homewood, with the legacy of the history that is there, the richness of the history that is there. Just my opinion, I feel that sometimes we are being pushed out of the idea or the decisions that are being made. Again, I'm just one here to voice my opinion, just somewhat learning how the councilman and things work. Do plan to come to attend the meetings more often so that to be more involved. That if you was to come over in the neighborhood, you will see I am one of the 3 houses on that 18th Street there that completely redone the home. Instead of going somewhere else, I chose to come back here. So I'm asking you as councilman to look and consider to come to speak with some of the residents there to see what our opinions are, how we feel, what do we think, what is the input there, and just to see the history of the developments that's there and the potential that's there. I have spoke with our wards, Mr. Andy and Miss Melanie recently. They came and we talked and shared my opinions and desires and wishes that was there. One that we already complained about the traffic that's there with the school that's up on the hill, how the cars just come to zoom there. So I can imagine once we put a housing project there, not a housing project, but a housing development there, the more traffic that's going to come, the more people that's going to come, that's going to there that will trigger over to our neighborhood as people just strolling through or just walking. So again, I'm just one that here just want to voice my opinion as far as Rosedale. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Andy, you read my mind. I was
sign
making
my
sure you
name.
signed in. Yeah, if you would just put your name down. Sure.
Did you say you do live on 18th now? No,
Yes, sir, I do. 1822 26th Avenue South.
26th Avenue South.
I'm in the green, and I'm right there on the very front, the greenhouse with the brown trimmed in tan.
Okay. I'm trying to think of in relation as to where.
Andrew, he's on the east side.
The opposite side of the road.
Rosedale.
Yes.
Off of Rosedale Drive. He's one of
I'm
those
down from the Lee
houses that
Center.
faces
Okay,
Rosedale.
okay. Gotcha.
Down from the Lee Center.
Pastor, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I normally see the opposite going on where someone's trying to move something from a commercial, from a residential to a commercial, and people struggle with that if they live near that. I'm struggling a little bit to understand what Rosedale wants there because they're going from a commercial use to a residential use, which I would have figured that Rosedale would love that. It's a private property owned by a third party. We don't own it. We can't make a park out of it, which I think some folks have thought about. But what would you want there if you don't want housing there?
I wouldn't, maybe I wouldn't say so much housing. I guess with being one, would it really fit there as far as housing? Because again, my opinion, if I had been on the part where the development, I would have been totally against the hotel that's just stuck there with no parking, none of that, to where once this come in, again, I'm looking at all the traffic flow to where I stay. And I guess some are asking the question or saying, okay, you moved into the city limits, you moved into the city. Yes, I did, but again, this is still where I reside, to where my home, to where sometimes I'm scared for my son, even though he's 13, to be out there on the street, to where I say I prefer you all play in the back, to where it's more safer. Not as far as people coming in, but as far as the traffic. And you asked a question. Looking at it, and I still haven't come up with a logical idea or what would like to be over there.
What little I know, it's a really tough piece of real estate as far as the development of it. It's got huge easements on it, so that it's not, whatever goes there is going to be really tough, but what's allowed there right now in C2 is pretty broad as far as things that I don't think Rosedale would want. So I'm a little bit trying to figure out why Rosedale wouldn't want housing there, which to me would be probably the lowest impact I think you could put there.
I guess
if you put nothing, it'd be lower, I guess, but I'm just trying to understand what you think Rosedale Development Corp wants.
Again, I wouldn't know, but I do plan on to talk to some more of our neighbors to ask. But then again, I was also looking at the numbers when it comes to saying affordable housing, the $2,300 to $3,000 a month. That question, could some of us over there afford that housing? No. Me personally, I know I couldn't, and I know I have a good job, but I mean, $3,000 a month for that area, no. I can pretty much probably say no one over there can afford that.
I don't think there's anything in Homewood that could provide for affordable housing. It's too expensive property.
I did have one other quick question more. So I know they mentioned tonight, and I think he went into more depth the last time he was here during committees, but a proposal for something like, well, he wouldn't even have to propose it if they were to do a gas station, for example. I know you mentioned traffic being a concern. Knowing that there is a gas station further up, or there had been further up the road, to me, kind of to Mr. Harden's point, I guess if traffic is a concern to me, a gas station would create more traffic, especially in and out throughout the day, and potentially at weird hours and that kind of thing versus. Thoughts on that? Because again, that's an. Choose that direction. And I guess that's.
Without need for city.
Yeah, without having to ask the city for anything.
Permits and plans.
Okay. So I just didn't know if you thought through that either.
No, again, no, sir. Again, I'm just getting part of this to where I'm seeing things. So no, sir, I have not thought about that.
I just do think it's interesting that we're interrogating the gentleman from Rosedale more than we are the actual developer. And so when we are asking questions to what Rosedale wants, this is the first time we're actually hearing from Rosedale. So again, this goes to the example of having actually developers speak to the community as opposed to questioning why they would challenge it. And I think that it's going down the wrong course of asking Rosedale to defend itself. When clearly the gentleman is raising some concerns, and I think that we could do some more to actually listen as to why those concerns may be legitimate in terms of the prices that they're trying to charge in that community. It may not be right in Rosedale, but it does border Rosedale. The gentrification that comes alongside putting something right next to Rosedale, and the fact that there are legitimate concerns, perhaps. And so I would just listen. I mean, that's what I'm trying to figure out as to how to weigh these options.
Well, can I say to Mr. President, even to the point to how far I can go back as far as Rosedale, I remember when 18th Street was open all the way into the front to where you could go in front of the house where I reside at and make a right turn, and you're right there at the Walgreens service station. So that's just how far I can go back as far as remembering, even when they closed that off, to put that up to where, you have to go out there on the main road to turn.
Okay. Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Mr. Bates, come on up. If you will sign in. Yes, sir.
My name is Evan Bates, for those of you who don't know me. I live at 1768 Woodbine Drive in Ward 4. The pastor in his prayer mentioned that we need to have a time to heal. I think that's poignant for the week and for the year that we just endured. I object to this rezoning not because the houses aren't attractive and not because the developer didn't do a whole lot of work to make them fit there, but because of a much more general harm that I think it does. When I was growing up, when I was born in Homewood in 1970, we had two historically black communities in the city. We had one at the end of Oak Grove, and we had Rosedale. The one at the end of Oak Grove was smaller. That community fed Hall Kent, and most of Rosedale fed Shades Cahaba. I grew up with lots and lots of friends from those communities, and I didn't understand the history behind them. To me, they were just another street and another neighborhood. We laughed with each other without understanding, I guess, that it was probably hurtful to some of the people who we were laughing with, that the paving machine's cord didn't reach that far because their streets sucked. But we played the Lees and the Thorntons and the Parkers and the Greers and the Skippers. The first crushing defeat of my life was losing to the Rosedale 11-year-old basketball team 58-6. We thought we were pretty good going into that, and we got our clocks clean, but they were good sports. They weren't hateful about it, and they went on to teach me a lot about life and basketball. After I graduated from high school, the community at the end of Oak Grove was, with council support, destroyed due to some rezoning decisions and some threats of other. The entire community was bought, redeveloped into a hotel and a bunch of nice homes, and that community ceased to exist. About a year later, there was a backroom deal that almost succeeded to trade Rosedale to the city of Birmingham in exchange for property around the Palisades. And there were a lot of denials and other recriminations, but it happened. This was Homewood. Broke my heart. Today, Rosedale faces one major threat, and it's rezoning. When you walk through the neighborhood or drive through the neighborhood and you see houses falling apart, it's not because of endemic poverty, it's because you have absentee landlords who don't want to invest in those houses because they're waiting on the council to provide rezoning so they can sell at a higher and better use. You see as many vacant lots through Rosedale as you do houses. And it's for the same reason. You go talk to the people who own those houses. Any real estate professional goes and talks to the people who own those vacant lots, and they're holding on to them because they believe, just like Service First, just like this property, eventually the rezoning is going to move in and destroy the community. So they hold on to that property and make the community less than it could be in the hope of that future profit. I'm not against profit, I'm a businessman. But this community means more to Homewood than a few $100s or a few $1,000s more in property tax. This community has been a lifeblood. It is the oldest of the four communities that came together to form Homewood. It was first settled, according to all the files I could find, in 1884. Gradually built up until about 1920. Musicians, doctors, nurses, civil rights leaders have all come out of Rosedale. Scientists. It was never viewed as something less. But when you drive through it today, it looks like something less. And the only way that we, as a community, I'm not throwing this on The sins of the past are not yours to bear. But the only way that we as a community can come together and begin to revitalize it, begin to provide owner-occupied housing, begin to restore some of the dilapidated housing that's there and bring in young families to affordable housing, is to get rid of the threat of perpetual rezoning. The council is going to have to make a strong statement that they are not going to rezone anything else in or around Rosedale, or there is no chance to bring back that community. As long as that threat is there, as long as that belief is there by the property owners that if they just hold on to it another 5 years or another 6 years, that rezoning is going to come to the middle. We will lose a treasure. We will lose one of the 4 boroughs. We will lose the most historic and one of the most storied pieces of Homewood. We will lose that lifeblood. And that'll be on us, not my dad's sins and not my granddad's sins, because they had plenty. That one will be on us if we allow that to continue to strangle the community, to continue to believe that their homes and their property are worth nothing more than a chance to redevelop, build $600,000 homes and force them out. That's the dilemma that we're in. And rezoning, that they shouldn't build, they shouldn't fix up their homes, they shouldn't rebuild on vacant lots. There's no reason to fix up the community center. I ask you to say no. If not in this case, for the council to get together and make a broad statement that they're not going to allow further rezonings and variances in Rosedale and allow a public-private partnership to begin to rebuild and revitalize with the council's support. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Bates. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak for or against this item?
President Wyatt, is the Zoom option working now, or do we know?
I don't believe so.
I have other RCDC members who have texted me asking if we could extend the public hearing process because they were intending to speak.
By Zoom?
Yes.
Okay. Real quick.
Ron said no.
No, it's not working? It's not working. Okay. And ma'am, I didn't know if you were getting up to speak. Come on, we'll take you first and then deal with the Zoom issue.
Well, hey y'all, I'm Samantha Nelms and I live at 1784 Murray Hill Road. So I am not a member of Rosedale or live near that community, but I went to high school with a lot of people who did grow up in Rosedale. And one thing that's really important for me, especially being a Black citizen of Homewood, is preserving Rosedale and that community and what it stands for. And I think it's great to bring in more housing, different things like that, but the worry of like gentrifying without taking into account the history of a community and exactly what that represents for the people that live near it, I think it's something we should definitely take into account, especially the prices of the housing, and affordable housing is a big issue we're having here in Homewood, and it's actually pushing people and some of our diverse population out just due to the pricing. So I definitely think if this is something y'all want to take into consideration, just please take into account the history of this community as well as affordable housing and different things like that. But that's all I had to say. Thank y'all. Oh, yes, I will definitely right now for my autograph. Y'all are welcome.
Is there anyone else present tonight that wishes to speak for or against this item? All right. So I know Zoom was an unforeseeable issue tonight, and I think we're actually going to have a later one that we're going to have to continue as well because of that. So unless there is something, and I'm happy to hear from the applicant about this, something timing-wise that is objectionable to you about continuing this over 2 weeks, I am inclined to do that absent, like I said, us messing this process up in some way for you. I don't know how time critical this issue is. I know you'd rather have it done tonight.
Well, we certainly have plans about things that are going on. So if it is continued, I'll leave that up to you. But it does cause us some issues. We would prefer, obviously, to get an up or down here. You said, does anybody want to speak? I'll just say one more thing. Obviously, I would just want to remind everybody, we are down zoning from an intensive commercial use that could have 800 plus cars a day, which is not in any way, shape, or form positive for Rosedale, in our opinion. An intensive commercial lighted 24-hour uses versus a less intensive residential use. So regardless of, some of the things that I heard tonight, I think the point comes back to that we are taking it down to a less intensive zoning.
You're Mr. Abernathy, correct?
Yes, I'm sorry.
I was just making sure. Okay.
Mr. Abernathy, should this be carried over? You referenced earlier, willingness, it seemed, to meet with the representatives with the Rosedale CDC and maybe present directly to them on the project. So if given 2 more weeks so that we could extend the public hearing, since best laid plans with Zoom kind of fell through this evening, would you be willing to do that?
Sure, of course.
All right, well, with that, and I do apologize that these circumstances have come up both to you and to the people that were on Zoom, but it was just simply unforeseeable tonight. So I do think we will carry this over, leave the public hearing open for the 25th.
President White, can I make one comment?
You absolutely can.
To Mr. Clapp, I wanted to mention to you, on the 25th, we are going to have a presentation of an Apple study that Councilor Gwaltney and I have been working on since our last term, and we are looking at connection from Central Park up to Vulcan. So you'll see where we are actually taking into account plans for that as well, and that is in the works. So one does not do away with the other. We can do, I wanted to let you know this is not going to impact that at all. We are working on that project.
All right. Then we will carry that item over, and like I said, leave the public hearing open till the 25th. All right, we'll move on to our next item, 02-1220, public hearing set for tonight for consideration of a variance to install a front yard fence along the creek and request permission to work in the right-of-way to continue the fence along the top of the concrete guard adjacent to the street at 328 Kenilworth Drive, brought to us by Tori Anderson as an agent for Vicki Pappas, who's the homeowner. And we'll start with a report from Special Issues. Ms. Smith.
Yes, we heard from the applicant actually at our meeting. It wasn't on the 4th. It was on the 21st of December. Sorry, I have to. That was a stretch for me. And she presented her item. She wants to do some similar fencing that currently exists over the creek on Roseland. As a safety feature, essentially. And so she presented to us. We met and voted 5-0 to refer this item back to the full council without recommendation pending the public hearing this evening. The motion was made by Ms. Anderson, seconded by Ms. Kier. And again, that was a 5-0 recommendation coming out of Special Issues.
Thank you very much, Ms. Smith. Mr. Kendrick, will you give us a first reading?
Yes, so this is just
It's a resolution.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
There are 2 parts to this. The first part is the fence, to allow them the front yard fence variance, and then the second part would be to permit them to work in the right of way. So you've really got two parts to this item and the item that follows this.
Okay.
It'd be appropriate to grant or not grant the fence ordinance before you get into the work in the right of way. If you don't grant the fence ordinance, there's no work in the right of way.
Well, you don't need a motion. She's here.
Let me open the public hearing. Come on up. You're going to be first. But we'll open the public hearing.
Thank you, guys. Yes, I'm Tori Anderson. I spoke with y'all at that December meeting. This is my mom's house. I'm speaking on her behalf and funding this fence here if it gets approved. But just like y'all said, we're just trying to extend the fence along where that car is parked, kind of along toward the street right there behind that tree and bushes, and then along the concrete barrier there, which is only about a foot or so off of the ground. We've got 2 4-year-olds that my mom keeps at her house, and it's scary when they're in the front yard. It's just a straight drop off, about 10 feet into the creek.
Anybody else here to speak for or against this item? Not, then I will close the public hearing. Any comments or questions from the council?
Ms. Anderson, I know you had discussed that the house on the other side of the creek has been purchased and is being renovated by another group of neighbors, and that they were considering also doing the same thing on their side with the fence, which will require them to come in front of us as well.
Sorry. Yes, and I spoke with them today. They were on Zoom and trying to get on tonight as well. I was too, and I ran up here real quick and it wasn't working. But and so they did, and I assume that will have to be a whole different set because it's a different address. But they're yes planning to do exactly the same thing on their side.
But I think you told us in that December 21st meeting, and that feels like it's been 17 years. You're going to pay to go ahead and have the fence put across all to their side, and then they would simply join their fence up to that.
That's correct.
They get ready for that.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, then I would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
And that's a motion to approve the...
Oh, yes, that would be a motion to approve the fence variance.
Thank you.
And so do we need to treat the work in the right of way as a separate item? Yes. Okay. All right, so this will be a motion to approve the fence variance in front of us.
All right. So that's a motion by Ms. Smith, a second by Mr. Gwaltney. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes 10-0. Do you have another one?
I would like to make a second motion to approve the work in the right of way with all of the proper indemnification agreements.
All right, motion by Ms. Smith.
Second.
Second by Mr. Harden. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That also passes 10-0, and those will be resolutions 2101
1 and 02, you get a...
and 2102. Congratulations. First resolutions of the year.
Thank you very much.
You get extra points for that.
Yes.
This is the identification agreement. Sign it, give it back to us.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Anderson.
Thank you.
All right, next item, 03-1220, public hearing set for tonight for permission to install a fence which extends 11 feet into the right-of-way at 401 Sterrett Avenue, brought to us by Cole and Catherine Kublik. And we will start this one also with a report from Special Issues.
Yes, we heard from Ms. Kubelik at our December 21st meeting, and the committee voted 5-0 to send this out without recommendation pending the public hearing this evening. The motion was made by Mr. Alman and seconded by Mr. Sims.
And Mr. Kendrick, this is going to work the same way, 2 different resolutions, correct? Okay. So we'll start by opening the public hearing. And Ms. Kublik, if you'll start.
Sure, yeah, hey guys. Okay, good, y'all have my picture still. So the first picture, this is the house like directly behind us, and the arrow shows where their fence is. It's about 2 feet from the sidewalk. So it's this picture, and then the next picture, that's the house directly, I guess, in front of the house I just showed. So if you stand at our house and look down on the sidewalk, all these fences are in line with the fence where we want our fence would be in line with these fences. So that's kind of where we came up with the whole 2 feet from the sidewalk, just so it looked uniform. And then I laid out some very nice flags. The orange is where we would like for the fence to be. The yellow is where the fence would be if we didn't ask for a variance. So as you can see, it pretty much cuts my yard in half, which, it is what it is. It visually looks silly. Also, if we had a fence where the yellow line is, that would just be basically dog walking poop park for us. So, we have sprinkler systems there already. We maintain it, mow, all that. So we would just like to enclose it to allow for a more visually pleasing and not as gross experience for us and our neighbors. Also, I have 3 small kids. 2 dogs, and just safety-wise, I would prefer not to have a huge area for congregation, for neighborhood people, or just people walking through right there. I'm kind of intruder paranoia type person, so just would like to everything neat and tidy and where I can see everything. So yeah, any questions? And then also, I don't know if y'all got, I do have like the survey and the plan. I thought I sent it in, but might not have gotten it. I have hard copies if anybody wants to see it.
It's attached.
Oh, good. Okay, great.
All right, anyone else in the audience to speak for or against this item?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that will close the public hearing. Any comments or questions from council?
I would move to approve.
The fence variance?
Yes, I'll move to the fence variance.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Smith, second by Mr. Sims. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 10-0.
And then I would move to approve the work in the right-of-way with the appropriate indemnification agreements.
Second.
All right, also a motion by Ms. Smith and second by Mr. Sims. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That is also 10-0, and so that will be resolution 2103 and 2104.
Okay, thank y'all so much. Y'all just made my night. Makes it easier to go home to a screaming baby.
Thank you. All right, next item, 01-1220, request for consideration to amend fiscal year budget 1920 and fiscal year 2021 budgets brought to us by Ms. Salter and Mr. Burgett. And we'll start with a report from Finance, which will come from Ms. Smith, since Mr. Jones abandoned us tonight.
Y'all are going to get sick of hearing me talk. The committee met and voted 5-0 to recommend approving the suggested budget amendments. The motion was made by myself and seconded by Mr. Gwaltney.
All right, any comments or questions? We have a motion from Finance. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that passes 10-0, and that will be 2105. All right, next item, 12-1220, request to declare the 1998 Pierce fire engine surplus brought to us by Mr. Janes, Fleet Maintenance, and Chief Hill and Battalion Chief Broadhead.
Change that.
He's not here to hear it tonight, it's fine.
He can't hear on Zoom, but he says, oh, I didn't mess his pay up. We were good.
All right, we'll start with a report from Finance, Ms. Smith.
Yes, the committee met and voted 5-0 to recommend approving declaring the fire engine surplus. The motion was made by Mr. Horton and seconded by myself.
All right, Mr. Kendrick, if we get a first reading.
Yes, sir. It's an ordinance to declare as surplus one 1998 Pierce fire truck. Be it ordained by the City Council of Homewood as follows, that it's hereby established and declared that the following one 1998 Pierce fire engine with VIN number ending in 0845 is no longer needed for public or municipal purposes, is therefore declared surplus property. Section 2, the mayor and the clerk are hereby authorized and directed to dispose of the property by auction to the highest bidder. Section 3, the provision that orders become effective immediately upon their adoption by the City Council.
Thank you, Mr. Kendrick. Is there a motion for unanimous consent?
So moved.
Second. Motion by Ms. Andrus, second by Mr. Gwaltney. And a roll call vote, please, Ms. Salter.
Counselor Gwaltney?
Yes, ma'am.
Counselor Gear?
Yes.
Counselor Allamon?
Yep.
Counselor Wolverton?
Yes.
Counselor Sims?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Yes.
Counselor Nelms?
Yes.
Counselor Andrus?
Yes.
Counselor Harden?
Yes.
And President Wyatt.
Yes. All right, so that is 10-0.
This will be 2791 if it passes, right?
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, so is there a motion for approval?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Gwaltney, second by Ms. Smith. And another roll call vote, please, Ms. Salter.
Counselor Gwaltney?
Yes, ma'am.
Counselor Gear?
Yes.
Counselor Allamon?
C.
You threw me off there.
Yes.
Counselor Wolverton?
Yes.
Counselor Sims?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Yes.
Counselor Nelms?
Yes.
Counselor Andrus?
Yes.
Counselor Harden?
Yes.
And Counselor President Wyatt.
Yes.
I did do Feliz Navidad for you on Everbridge one day. Did you catch that?
Oh, I appreciate
I sent an Everbridge thing out and I put Feliz Navidad.
That's awesome.
That was a shout out for you. You saw it.
All right, so that passes 10-0 as well. Ordinance number 2171. Next item is 131220, request to refund unused building permit per city code to Reeves Construction, brought to us by Wyatt Pugh, BEZ Department Head, Mr. Brigette, Finance Director, Assistant City Clerk, and Melody Salter, City Clerk and Assistant
Alex, I'm
Finance
sorry.
Director. Yes,
Is that
ma'am.
the right number? Because I thought the first one was 2790.
Yeah.
2791.
So should it?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. That's correct. Sorry, I didn't mean to. Okay.
2791,
We
I'm
got you
sorry.
covered.
Thank you. Okay, back to 131220, and a report from Finance, Ms. Smith.
Yes. The committee met and voted 5-0 to recommend approving the refund. And just for the record, that amount is $22,952. And this was a project that was originally scheduled to happen at the Wells Fargo building in Wildwood that was scrapped because of COVID. So it never even started. So that is $22,952 being refunded to Reeves Construction, and it was recommended that we do that, 5-0. Motion made by myself and seconded by Mr. Horton.
All right, any other questions or questions or comments from the council? All right, then we have a motion from Finance. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 10-0 and is 2106. All right, next item, 141220, request to authorize the mayor to sign a revised agreement with ALDOT relating to the Turkey Foot project regarding additional lanes on Oxmoor Boulevard from Summit Parkway to Columbiana Road, brought to us by Wyatt Pugh, BEZ Department Head. And another report from Finance, Ms. Smith.
Yes, the committee met and voted 5-0 to recommend approval. Motion was made by myself and seconded by Mr. Waltney.
All right, we have a motion from Finance. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 10-0 and will be 2107.
Hey, Alex.
Yep.
Okay, so I was able to jerry-rig some stuff, and I at least have audio back there. Are there any other items that you need? If you have any other items that you need people to come in from Zoom, we can do that from this point forward. I know we can't go backwards with the other one because we've already moved that forward. But if there are any others, do you see any others?
No, that does our public hearing, so I think we're
Just wanted to
okay.
make sure you knew.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so our next item is 010220, request for updates on Green Spring revitalization, brought to us by Berkeley Squires Public Works Director. And we'll start with a report from Public Works.
Sorry.
Mr. Wolverton. Sorry.
We're looking at microphones here. I'm sorry.
No problem.
This is 010220, is that correct? Okay. Yes, so the committee voted, Mr. President, the committee voted 5-0 to recommend the lowest bidder, which was Ground Tech LLC, in the amount of $169,957, or $57, I believe, $169,957 to move forward with the landscaping portion. And we also voted to refer this item out to Finance for the next bid opening, which will be on February 2nd.
Thank you very much. All right, we have a motion from Public Works. Any questions or comments?
I guess I can add to that that the motion was made by Councilor Harden and seconded by Councilor Gear.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? There's also 10-0, and I lost 20. That will be resolution 2108. All right, which brings us to 020920, request for consideration to work in the right-of-way to extend paving in alley less than 55 feet for rear vehicle access at 1512 Roseland Drive, brought to us by Robert Fox, agent for homeowner David Bruno, and another report from Public Works, Mr. Wolverton.
Yes, sir. Mr. President. The committee met and voted 5-0 to recommend approval. This motion was made by Councilor Hardin and seconded by Councilor Sims. I will say that it was a fairly specific recommendation, so do we have that anywhere?
Sure.
I think it's in the resolution.
Okay, perfect.
But I'll be glad to read it.
Sure. Why don't we go ahead?
For the record, that'd be great.
To make improvements to the Valley Avenue Alley pursuant to plans approved by the BEZ to provide rear access to 1512 Roseland Drive. The grantee has agreed to contribute up to the sum of $300 to reimburse the adjacent property owner for the cost of relocating their current fence located in the alley to the rear of 512 Roseland Drive.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kendrick. Any questions or comments?
I just have one small comment. I spoke to one of the other homeowners this afternoon, and he had a discussion with Mr. Bruno's attorney about there's a large holly tree in that general vicinity. The problem is right now, Mr. Bruno says it's on his property, but there's some thought that it might not all be on the property. So if we could just make sure that that kind of gets figured out in this, I don't know how, because I don't know why it does that, because I asked Wyatt if it was, and he says that doesn't show up on the survey. But I'm putting that in the record because there's a question as to whether, apparently Mr. Bruno's attorney said that the holly tree would not be removed, and the homeowner wanted to make sure that was part of this.
Just to make sure, the applicant has agreed not to move the holly tree regardless of whose land it's on.
Well, he said that, but then he also said that he can't really guarantee that it won't be removed by the people who actually purchased the house.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so
anyway.
he doesn't have any plans to remove it, but if it's on that property, subsequent owners might choose to do that.
But if it's not on the property.
My understanding was he was going to do the improvements to the alleyway anyway, so.
Well, I think we're just talking about whether or not he's taking a tree down in that process. So.
Correct, but to your point, you said he is not. He has said that he will not.
He stated to me that he wanted to trim it up, but
I think
he had
the
no
other
plans to
homeowner.
move it, but he certainly couldn't speak for a future owner.
Right.
Okay, but
if it's on his property, I'm not sure how we can tell him.
Right.
Okay,
I'm just
so-
putting that out there.
Got it.
It's on the record. There we go.
That's an agreement between them that doesn't involve our resolution.
Correct.
We're all clear
Yes.
on that, right?
No, I just putting that out there for the record.
Fantastic. All right. Any other comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Who's nay? Okay.
Your name? Yeah.
So we are 9-1, and that will be resolution 2109. All right.
And the holly tree comment is not part of the resolution? No, it's not.
It's just part of the record that they agreed to that, but it's not included in the resolution. All right, next item, 170220, request to address trash pickup concerns and requirements for downtown business properties, brought to us by Tim Ponsus and former President Wright. And we will start with a report from Special Issues. Ms. Smith.
Yes, committee met and voted 5-0 to finally recommend approval of this. The motion was made by Mr. Alon and seconded by Ms. Andrus.
All right, so we have a motion from Special Issues. Mr. Kendrick, can we have the first reading?
Yes, sir. This is a lengthy ordinance, and I'll be as brief as I can. It's an ordinance to amend Article 2 entitled Solid Waste Disposal of Chapter 13 entitled Municipal Utilities and Services of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Homewood. Be ordained by the city as follows. Article 2 is amended to read as follows. Section 13-20 involves the definitions. 1321 involves specifications for containers. Section 13-22 involves the accumulation of trash and garbage other than in containers. Section 13-23 sets out the duties of originators of garbage, disposing of trash, ashes, etc. in garbage containers, and prohibited deposits. Section 13-24 sets out the duties of the originators of trash, disposing garbage in trash containers, and prohibited deposits. Section 13-25 relates to collection and removal of unauthorized containers. Section 13-26 deals with boxes, crates, and cartons from businesses. Section 13-27 deals with the denial of services to violators. Section 13-28 deals with the duty of an owner of certain property to provide special containers and servicing. Section 1329 deals with the placement of containers for collection. Section 1330 deals with persons in charge of rental property. Section 1331, owners and tenants of dwellings generally. Section 13-32 deals with persons with fenced yards harboring dogs. Section 13-31 deals with the maximum number of containers in weekly pickups for restaurant and stores. Section 13-34 deals with the special containers required. Section 1335 deals with tampering with containers or contents. Section 13-36 deals with condemnation of defective containers. Section 13-37 deals with storage, decomposition of materials, and fly control. Section 1338 deals with placing leaves, trash, and drains or gutters for collection. 1339 deals with animal excrements. Section 1340 deals with unauthorized disposal of garbage or refuse. Section 1341 deals with penalties for the violation of the ordinance. Section 2, that all other provisions of the Code of Ordinances except set out here and above shall remain in full force and effect. Section 3, if any part of provision or is declared to be unconstitutional, invalid by a court of competent jurisdiction, all the parts not otherwise affected or remain in full force and effect.
Thank you, Mr. Kendrick.
I would move for unanimous consent.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Smith, second by Ms. Andrus. Roll call vote, please, Ms. Salter.
Counselor Gwaltney?
Yes, ma'am.
Counselor Gear?
Yes.
Counselor Alamon?
Yes.
Counselor Wolverton?
Yes.
Counselor Sims?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Yes.
Counselor Nelms?
Yes.
Counselor Andrus?
Yes.
Counselor Harden?
Yes.
And President Wyatt.
Yes. That is 10-0.
And I would move to approve.
Motion by Ms. Smith, second by Mr. Gwaltney. Another roll call vote, please, Ms. Salter.
Counselor Gwaltney?
Yes, ma'am.
Counselor Gear?
Yes.
Counselor Alamon?
Yes.
Counselor Wolverton?
Yes.
Counselor Sims?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Yes.
Counselor Nelms?
Yes.
Counselor Andrus?
Yes.
Counselor Harden?
Yes.
And President Wyatt.
Yes. That is also 10-0, and let's make sure I get it right.
2792, I think.
2792. All right, next item, 05-1220, request to work in the public right-of-way adjacent to 605 Morris, brought to us by Heath Gurley and Greg Cobb of BZ. Report from Special Issues, Ms. Smith.
Yes, the committee met, voted 5-0 to recommend approval of the work in the right-of-way with all the proper indemnification agreements. We heard from Mr. Gurley and several of the neighbors in the area. The motion was made by Ms. Andrus and seconded by Mr. Almond.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments from the council? If not, we got a motion from Special Issues. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's 10-0 and will be 21-10. All right, 06-1220, request for permission to restore an accessory structure that exists partially in the unmaintained city right-of-way for use as a workshop at 2702 BM Montgomery Street, brought to us by Mr. Martinez and Mr. Pugh from the BZ Department. And again, we'll have a report from Special Issues, Ms. Smith.
Yes, the committee met and voted 5-0 to recommend approving the restoration with the proper indemnification agreements. We heard from the Martinez family, and the motion was made by Mr. Almond and seconded by Ms. Andrus.
All right, so we have a motion from Special Issues. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That also passes 10-0 and will be 21-11.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Here's your agreement.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, just make sure you sign the indemnification agreement.
50 pages long.
Get it back to
I'm with the 605 Morris, the item directly before us.
Sure.
All right, that gets us to the end of old business. Brings us to the committee referral agenda. I would entertain a motion for approval of the committee referral agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Andrus, second by Mr. Wolverton. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's 10-0, which brings us to other new business. First item is 06-0121, request to set a public hearing and referral to the Special Issues Committee for consideration of petition to vacate a strip of Parkway Drive Next to Our Lady of Sorrows parking lot, brought to us by Wyatt Pugh and Melody Salter. We will set that public hearing for February 22nd at 6 p.m. Next item, 070121, request to authorize the mayor to sign change order to CB&A's 18th Street East Side contract, brought to us by Mr. Burgett, Finance Director, Assistant City Clerk, and Melody Salter, City Clerk and Assistant Finance Director. This is an item that's bringing us back money. That it deals with the irrigation that's already been put in. There was apparently $3,000 in savings on that project. So this allows the mayor to sign a new contract for us to get the $3,000 back. Any questions or comments?
No, thank you.
This is the 18th Street?
Yeah.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Gwaltney, second by Ms. Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and that is 10-0. And that is 21-12. Thank you. All right, next item, 080121, request to authorize repairs of city lights and traffic lights on 18th Street and 29th Avenue, brought to us by Mayor McCluskey and Councilor Gwaltney. This deals with the accident that occurred at the old curve and getting the light back up.
Rebilling it to their insurance.
So, so this will require, as part of this, an amendment to.
I don't believe they have any insurance.
The driver. You're right. Our insurance is. Mr. Mayor, would you like?
No, I was just going to.
You're welcome to speak to it.
Yes, right now we've turned this over to insurance, so we will likely be paying for this and getting reimbursed, but we've got to figure out exactly how much it's going to cost. We've got to reorder these. It's going to take some time. So again, like I made in my very first post, please tell the constituents to be patient with us. We know it's going to be a problem for a little while, but we'll get it fixed. So.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And Ms. Smith, I believe you have the actual, what we're doing with the amendments to the budget for this?
Yes, Ms. Salter gave it to me right before. Mr. Burgett can back me up if I say anything wrong. I believe the light, the traffic light and the light pole, the estimated cost of that repair is $50,000, so we're going to have to do a budget amendment, a transfer from insurance claims to property, right? Property.
Yes, ma'am.
Yep, and then for the tree, they've estimated $15,000. We don't think it's going to be that much, but we're keeping that in there.
The tree being the Christmas tree.
The Christmas tree, yes, that was taken out, yeah.
Related to the tree, I will say that we do have some estimates back on that, and it is right at like 14.5.
Okay, so 15,000
it's pretty
is not-
spot on, yeah.
not-
And that was shared, that estimate I think was shared with Robert today and Randy.
Yes, so we got the estimate a couple of days ago, and I've already submitted to the insurance company, and they said as soon as we get the estimate, a written estimate for the pole, they'll pay that as well.
Great, thanks.
All right. So I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Nelms, second by Mr. Harden. Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That is 10-0 and will be 21-13. All right, that brings us to 090121, request for consideration of ABC license, 140 special event retail for Cafe Is LLC, doing business as Art Link 2021 at 1 Independence Plaza, or the parking lot for that address, on February 5, 2021. This item is still pending. It doesn't require fire approval, but it does require police approval, so which is still in process. So if there's a motion to approve this, I would make it conditional upon police approval, please.
Motion.
Okay.
Contingent upon police approval.
And I would second that.
I have a question.
Yep, no problem. Hang on. Mr. Hard.
I had that call and ask what the heck all this was. And so because of the pandemic, the UAB Cancer Center is having their fundraiser. And what they're really doing is you come by and pick up food, and they always apparently give a bottle of wine. So I didn't understand the ABC license if they're not selling anything. To me, they're just handing wine out, and that didn't seem to me to fall into an ABC license.
Yeah, I don't think you can hand it out either without a license.
Do they have to, do they raise money for it prior?
I'm sorry?
Do they raise money for it?
That's right, they did hand them money as a donation.
Right.
So that's where.
Yeah, there's a transaction going on. Mr. Gwaltney, I believe you had a question.
I just want to make sure it wasn't an event that was going to impact the neighborhood next door since it's elevated traffic against one side. But I don't think this is going to impact like the social events. I don't think that's the case.
I do not believe so. I believe it's just driving through that parking lot there.
Picking it up and going.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Kate Reed. I'm the owner of Cafe Is.
Hey, well.
And I can answer any questions that you might have for this.
Thanks for being here.
Well, let me ask this one first.
Okay.
Anything that's been said that's wrong?
Other than
Good, okay.
approval from the police department. Because I had a background check and I had to go for the ABC board and get a background check in Montgomery. But then the Homewood police said they had to do their own. And so I filled out the forms last week, but I haven't heard. But we're kind of crunched to get this approved because everything, what you give me has to go to Montgomery.
Right. So that I got an email from the police saying they're still working on that process. So what we're going to do tonight is to go ahead and approve it so that you don't have to wait 2 more weeks after they approve it and come back. We'll go ahead and approve it conditional upon that. So as soon as they get that done, you'll be ready to go to Montgomery.
Super. Okay. So will I just get a letter from?
Will it be from Ms. Salter?
You'll get it?
You'll be contacted by the city clerk.
Okay. So I'll get that and then I'll take it back to the ABC board. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? All right. Then we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is 10-0 and does not require a resolution, correct, Mr. Kinder? All right. 10-01-21, request for consideration of approval of vouchers for the period of December 22, 2020 through January 11, 2021. I believe, Ms. Smith, you have the honors?
Yes, I did, if you want to call that an honor. I would say I was going to try to be all Walter Jones and like tell y'all some information because he always says he wants to learn something, but we're way past that now. So I'm not going to say that.
You
But
have the one
what I
thing you
am
can
going to say is I want to say a big thank you to Robert and his staff and Melody and her staff because I don't think there's probably a lot of people who managed to run 2 city departments while a pandemic was going on and there were 2 elections and there was a bond refinance and there were budget hearings and it was just a really tough fall. And the fact that we are still paying bills and still getting through this process makes me very, very thankful that we have some really wonderful people working for the city. So I had questions. Robert answered them as he always does, and I would move to recommend approving the vouchers for the period of December 22nd through January 11th.
Second. I'm sorry, who was the second?
John.
Second. Motion by Ms. Smith, second by Mr. Harden. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That is also 10-0, and that will be 21-14. Look at us getting it done right before 8 o'clock. All right.
Is that what time the game starts?
So before we start comments, remember that next week is MLK Day, so we will not be having any meetings. So when you're setting committee meetings, we will set those for the 25th before council. So just we'll double up that night as well. Mr. Mayor, you have any comments?
Thank you. So I joked with Alex today that this is the first time you've had an Auburn fan for a council president and an Auburn fan for a mayor. So you know, if you guys can bear with me, I think I'm going to go through my State of the City address just to run it by you to make sure. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Love y'all. Y'all have a good night.
All right, Mr. Gwaltney.
I assume finance will be at 5 p.m., so I will set public safety. Do we have any idea how long Walter may need? Can we squeeze it in 15 minutes?
And do we have council the same night? We do, don't we?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's see, there are 1, 2, 3 items on the referral agenda and a couple of things that were carried over. I think I can decisions for now.
Let's just give him 30. Let's give him 30.
Let's just be safe. Let's be safe and not go on. It is not being here.
I think we should bump this time.
Yes.
Yeah, he's not here anyway. Like, why does he, we're just, I guess if you serve 6 terms, then you have some deference.
That's right.
I guess.
I'll set public safety for 5:30 for 15 minutes because I'll need more of the following. Maybe.
Okay.
Yes.
Anything else? That's it. All right, thank you. Ms. Gear?
No comments, roll tide.
I was almost going to say thank you, but just kidding, thank you. All right, Mr. Alamont.
Yes, I would like to first shout out the library, our public library, for being designated a 4-star library. I think it's a really big deal, and credit to Debbie Fout and the staff that they have over there to offer those great services to our community. Second, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the fact that we face one of the most atrocious weeks in our country's history, and I just think that it's important to be able, as a body of folks who sometimes disagree, be able to do so civilly and be able to do the best for our community and understand that we may disagree on certain points, but we love the place we represent and that we continue to represent Homewood in the best possible light.
Well said, thank you. Mr. Wolverton.
I agree with that sentiment, first off. And secondly, I don't think I need to call committee unless we have an update on the ceasefire stuff. Does anybody know?
We won't have.
Okay, so we will not call Public Works, which will help us that day. I just want to real quickly say thank you to the Homewood City Schools. They've had a lot to navigate right now. I think essentially bumping the start of school coming back was a wise decision, and I appreciate their willingness to be open to making those accommodations and doing their best to navigate the difficult times that we're all in right now. So. And just for the record, I got my round 1 of COVID on the 23rd, a couple days before Christmas. Nothing but a sore arm for about 24 hours. So I will be fully vaccinated on the 20th, hopefully. So
very jealous.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you guys and Happy New Year.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sims.
Good evening. I just want to let everybody know that the Beautification Board meets tomorrow at 6 p.m. The agenda and the link to the Zoom are on the city website. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you. Ms. Smith.
I am going to set special issues for 5:45. I think I'm only going to need 15 minutes, maybe not even that much. So special issues at 5:45. And Preservation Commission is also meeting tomorrow night by Zoom at 7 p.m. And I believe that agenda and Zoom link have been posted to the city website as well.
Do you also, my understanding is that y'all at least think you know when you're going to have the interviews for the...
Yes, and Melody will be posting that tomorrow.
Okay, but you think it's going to be on the 20th, right?
It is on Wednesday, the 20th, yes.
Since we won't have a meeting before then.
Correct.
And she said something about starting at 5:30 and doing 30 minutes for each of the three?
Yeah, 5:30, 6, and 6:30 for the three bids.
Fantastic, thank you. Ms. Nelms.
I don't really have anything today. Happy New Year and all that good stuff, and roll tide.
Thank you very much. Ms. Andrus.
I'm going to set P&T. Councilor Walton and I have our Apple study that is really presented, and so it's okay. I hope it's set for 4:30. I think it's set for 4:45. And everybody run over.
I agree.
So let's go for 4:30. Let me give you the update from Lincoln Park Command. We've not emailed that out to you guys today. I want to talk about the vaccine effort, which really was the main focus. Right now we have 623 hospitalized, 139 on meds, 121 in the ICU, with 10 deaths yesterday. We are looking at a downward trend in the fatality rate. We are about, we think next week we will be going into the first part of 1B, which will be those 75 and older and first responders that are non-medical. And then when we get into that group, that's about 43,000 in Jefferson County. There is a new online registration that calls for got everyone on real fast. And they're going to bring in some full-time, or they were just using volunteers, and they're going to have to be bringing in some folks to pay to be there. So they did set up a new online. They did have a press conference today. The online is already taken in like 12,000 submissions. So they, we want the vaccine. So that's really the update. Also, last week, if you guys know, we sent out a call again and gathered up 2 carloads worth of stuff to the Boutwell. Counselor Sims collected $585, which we ended up paying to pay for hospitals for some of the saying Boutwell, and that will be able to I think it is cold outside. So anyway, that's it. No more.
Thank you. Mr. Harden, you have to respond to that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're revoked as an A&M alum, right?
Yeah, we did have a tough week last week, and for me personally, one of the tough things was Steve Sarkisian going to my competing school over there, and then they're gonna recruit against my school, Texas A&M. But I'm just always want to, again, be grateful to all our city workers and all that everybody does. I know there've been a lot of COVID. Berkeley's had a lot of problems in with COVID on his teams, and so we're just grateful for everybody. That's it.
All right, I've only got about 30 minutes of announcements. No. In all seriousness, I do want to thank a couple of people. Thank you to Brian back there for working through a difficult night that happened. We appreciate it and appreciate you letting us get this meeting in. So thank you very much. Some were accusing me of sabotaging this to make it go long. I think it was actually an Alabama fan sabotaging it to make it finish. But anyway, thank you, Brian, and thank you to everyone. I would like to echo just what Mr. Alamon said. I'm always proud of this council for working together. And even when we disagree, and I hope we always do that and respect each other for everyone's opinions, questions, everything else. So I would agree with that. And then lastly, thank you to everyone for actually showing up tonight. I apologize that you're missing part of the game, but it did need to get in tonight, so I appreciate everyone doing that, including all the people in the public that showed up. So with that, we've still got some time before September 4th, which I believe is the first game against Akron. But we'll go ahead and leave for tonight. So thank you. We'll be adjourned.